All right. We're going to get started, guys. I hope the pasta was really good. If you're still hungry, we have so much. So please go get more. And again, don't feel bad to get up while we're talking and get some more food. There's plenty of it. And then I just put out some coffee and creamer. It's already half gone. So if you want it, speak now or forever hold your peace. So I'm going to intro Faith one more time just because a few more people showed up. So this is Faith Bennett, longtime friend of Heaven and I's, and also my sister's. This is my sister Lauren, by the way. She's just being a hobo in our house right now. But this is Faith. Faith and I used to work together at Lifeway. We went to church together. All three of us went to school together at different times at different schools.
Two different schools.
Two different schools,
wow,
yes. So it's been what, 10 years?
Like 8.
8? Okay. Yeah, somewhere in there. So Faith's awesome. Faith's done a lot of different stuff, a lot of different ministry. You guys are going to enjoy her tonight. She's going to talk about a little bit about what she does, but also talk about the Schaeffers, who I've mentioned a lot. She's going to make more sense of why I'm mentioning them so much. And I think you guys will think they're cool. They're a big inspiration for me, and I know her as well. Charlie's middle name is based on them. Super cool couple. She'll talk about them. Once she's done, I'm going to come up and I'm going to talk for a really long time about creativity and art and things like that. And she's going to do the same. And then afterwards, we're going to do some discussion, some Q&A. It'll be cool. It'll be different. Don't be intimidated. And also, we will do questions at the end. So if you have questions, write them down, hold them till that very end point, and come back and answer them then. That way we make it through everything. But I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let Faith talk. So, Faith.
Hello. Yeah, Corbin and I, hello.
Yeah.
Corbin and I like to say we were a friendship that we never thought it would actually be a friendship because we didn't get along for a long part of our friendship, but I loved his wife, so he stayed. Yeah, so like Corbin said, I work in ministry. I work at a church in St. Louis, Missouri. It's called Covenant Presbyterian Church. Francis Schaeffer, we'll talk more, actually was a pastor there for about, I think, 5 or 6 years, before launching and going to Europe to launch Libri. At our church, we have something called the Schaeffer House, which is a really cool thing that one of our pastors kind of spearheads, and I get to help a lot with events, but I'm usually doing what Susan Noel have been doing, so it's been fun to see them, and thank you for your work. Let's come out for dinner really quick, because all of that was wonderful. So yeah, I'm going to turn my iPad off, because that was embarrassing that we are yelling at me. And so at the Schaeffer House, we do a lot of what Libri tries to do. We don't have residents, but we have people in the St. Louis area. They come and we just engage with culture and life, and we have artists come, we have authors come, we have movie nights where we watch a movie and then discuss as Christians how do we engage with the film. A couple of weeks ago we did The Truman Show, which was fun. I've never seen that movie until then. And so it was fun to engage with that. And then we also do a thing called book discussions. And so we'll have books where people can read or not read, or sometimes people do a chat GPT summary and they come in. And you know what? We take it all. Sometimes it's me, let's be honest. And we just get to talk and we get to engage and hang out with. And it's a great way for outreach, and it's a great way for coming with, as Libri, one of Libri's like mottos is honest questions, or honest answers for honest questions. And so that's kind of what we do in a minute scale at the Schaeffer House in honor of Francis Schaeffer's legacy. So we're going to jump in. For the first part, I'm just going to kind of just share Francis and Libri's life and a little bit about them, a little bit about Libri. It's going to be like in 1,000-foot view, because they just did so much of their life. And so if you want to know more about their life and ministry, Edith Schaeffer has written a book called Tapestry, which is the story of her and Francis's life. And then she also has a book called Libri, which talks a lot about the work they did in Switzerland. So we're going to jump right in. I have fun photos for you all. So Francis was born in January 30th in 1912 in Germantown, Pennsylvania. And so he was born to basically a nominal Christian home, but he will later say that he felt like he didn't grow up in a Christian home at all. His dad was a blue-collar, second-generation German immigrant, and his mother stayed home and was a English, I think also a second-generation immigrant from England. Francis, growing up, went to a very liberal Presbyterian church in Philadelphia, and throughout Francis's teenage years, he really struggled with what he believes, what is truth. He declared, or not declared, but he called himself an agnostic for a long time. He was really into philosophy and really into just finding answers to the life's questions. And through those pondering life and pondering philosophy, he read the Bible randomly, and 6 months into reading the Bible, he was converted to Christianity and knew that Scripture was true and that the Lord and the gospel is true. And so it was a really cool story about how his wondering kind of led him to the Lord and how the Lord saved him in that. Then after that, he was currently in trade school when that was happening. And his father, he was thinking about not wanting to go to, or he was thinking he had a calling to seminary. And he knew he wanted to be called to, or he knew he had a call to missions and ministry, but he didn't know what that looked like, and he was scared. And he was also in trade school, and his parents did not want that to really be his life in ministry. And so he flipped a coin, and he was like, if this is heads or tails, I forget what the story goes, I'll go to study philosophy and religion on my way to become a pastor. And he did it a couple times because he kept on not liking the answer. At some point, he then realized that he needs to go to seminary, he needs to go study, and his father was very against that. As Schaeffer was leaving, his dad, or he told his father what was happening, what he was doing, and his father was like, I don't agree with what's happening, and once you leave, don't come back, basically. And once he left, as he was leaving, Francis Schaeffer's father yelled out, I'll pay for the first semester, and then slammed the door in his face. So it's cool to see how even in the bitterness of that, a father still cared and still wanted the best for his son and all of that. So then Francis left trade school. He went to a college prep course so that he could go to university, and went to Hampton-Sydney University. He actually, while there's a whole story of how he would engage with non-believers there and take them to church. But he was actually awarded with the Outstanding Christian Award and graduated magna cum laude. And while he was there, he met his wife, Edith. And Edith was born in China. Her family were China missionaries with China Inland Mission, which is the organization that Hudson Taylor, if you're familiar with Hudson Taylor's work, started. And so she grew up in China, but whenever she was a teenager and she came back to the States to go to university, and was attending a liberal Presbyterian church in Germantown as she was studying home economics. And so while she was there was a Unitarian minister coming to her church to do a lecture called How I Know Jesus is Not the Son of God. And quickly after that lecture ends, Francis stands up and says, you're wrong, and basically shares his whole testimony and what he believes to be true about the gospel and who Jesus is. And right when he sits down, Edith also shoots up and also says the same thing of refuting this man's argument. And while Francis stood up, Edith's eye got caught to him, and he was like, who's that? And then when Edith stand up, Francis was like, who is that? And so later, after everything ended that evening, Francis walked up to Edith and said, hi, do you have plans after this? And she said, yes, I do. And he said, cancel them. So Francis walked her home, and then 3 years later they were married. So it's a good thing she canceled those. This is a photo from their wedding. So after they were married, Francis eventually went to our South Westminster Seminary in Philadelphia, and studied for only 1 year. If you know anything about the Presbyterian Church, were really old. I go to Presbyterian Church currently. Don't hold that against me. I know y'all are Baptists. The Presbyterian Church is really, really old, and we have a lot of history and connections and splits. And so it was just one of those times. I think it was 1935 and 36. And so the Presbyterian from the Northern Presbyterian Church of America split due to liberal conservatism, or liberal theology and conservative theology. And in that, it's a long story, but in that, the seminary kind of also had a shift and a split. And so a new seminary, Faith Theological Seminary in Delaware, kind of started, and Francis then transferred there to finish his time in seminary to prepare for his work as a pastor. Edith, during that time, would sew handmade tailored men's suits and leathered belts to put her husband through seminary, and was like the primary breadwinner in that time, and supported Francis as he was studying. And then Francis begins his pastoral work. He pastored a church for a short time in Pennsylvania, and then he came to my church at Covenant Seminary. There's a picture of him preaching at Covenant right now. He was there he started in 1943, and then in 1947, he left to go to Europe. But during that time, Francis began his pulpit ministry. Children were the heart of Schaeffer's call to evangelism. He would host something called summer Bible studies, kind of like VBSs, but were 4 weeks long. And one of his summers, I think there was like 217 students coming into the church and hearing the gospel for a span of a whole month. He would actually drive around like parks in St. Louis and just pick up children and take them to church, which is something you cannot do now. That would not be good. But that was his heart, which is just kind of funny to think about because that would not fly. And then 4 years later, the Independent Board of Presbyterian Foreign Mission sends the Schaeffers to Europe. And there they kind of do work for a year to, after World War II, there was a big liberal postmodern shift in European churches. And so the Schaeffers went to kind of help aid and give counsel to those churches who were hurting. And then they come back in 1947 and just feel the heart to go back. And so he pastored in St. Louis for just a tiny bit more. And then him and Edith uprooted their life and went to Switzerland with I think they had 3 children at the time. They had 3 girls and a boy, and I don't think Frank was born yet. But they had 3 children also going. And so in 1948, they go to Europe and start a missionary outreach to children. 3 years later, Francis begins to really struggle with what he's believing. He refrains it as he had a crisis of faith, and struggled to see the gospel working in his life. He struggled to see how the gospel was manifesting in the people around him who claimed to be Christians' lives, of how they weren't leading with love and they weren't leading with grace. And he just really kind of struggled to feel the Lord working in his life as prevalent as he once did, and was just very spiritually dry. He knew all the right answers to all the theological debates and correct doctrines, but just felt empty. And so Francis, in modern day terms, deconstructed his beliefs and what he knew about spirituality, and then reconstructed a couple years later. I think it was only like 2 or 3 years that he went through the struggle of a true faith in Christ. And so in his 1971 book, True Spirituality, he highlights the importance of sanctification and the work of the Holy Spirit. And he also highlights the importance of prayer, which will go into extreme amounts with his work in L'Abri, which we're about to talk about. And so he writes in his books, True Spirituality, sanctification includes a moment dependence on God. So then, there's them going to Europe. He starts L'Abri. In 1955, him and Edith start a fellowship called L'Abri, and it was basically inviting people into their homes in Switzerland and their chalet, And L'Abri means shelter in French. And so it just began with friends of their oldest daughters coming home from university and asking the Schaeffers really hard questions, and really questions about Christianity and truth and life and how do we engage in cultural issues. But then the news of these conversations spread, and people from all over just kept on coming to the Schaeffers' house and to just kind of have a pilgrimage to the Alps to engage with the Schaeffers. And so in this philosophy of L'Abri, they kind of emphasize the key, which is honest answers for honest questions. And so then L'Abri Fellowship began to grow, and it would host residents for a long period of time, so you could actually come, and you can still come to L'Abri and spend weeks, months, semesters there. And then they would also have visitors and work and people who would come and work. And it just became a house of fellowship and hospitality and truth and love and beauty and gospel-centered conversations. L'Abri operates still on 4 principles, which, if we knew anything about Schaeffer's kind of deconstructing, it makes sense of these principles now. Of they never ask for money, but they just make their needs known to God in prayer. They also don't recruit staff, but are dependent that the Lord will send the people that they want, or that He wants at the right time. They also only work in short plans, which I don't know if you're like me, but that would drive me crazy. They just depend on the guidance of the Lord. And they don't publicize themselves either, but they trust God that He will send the people that they need. And so in 1960, L'Abri has grown to a remarkable movement that drew the attentions of Time magazine. And then Edith would also have something called family letters, which were like newsletters, and it would reach about 1,300 readers. That would be a lot more. And she was a monumental player in the life of L'Abri. She really just encapsulated what biblical hospitality looks like, and just the forgotten practice of homemaking. And later, it was really like her movement and her passion for art and culture and history, which makes sense with her life growing up overseas on the mission field, that L'Abri became what it was. There are stories about how Edith would work tirelessly, like throughout the night, to make these beautiful pieces of food or flower arrangements. There was told that there was never a table L'Abri that didn't have a flower arrangement on it. She sounds like my kind of woman, honestly. That sounds great. And she actually would, there was a soon-to-be pastor, his name's Jerem Bars, thank you. And he, Corbin will reference him when he speaks. He came to L'Abri and was a student there and worked for L'Abri for a long time. And Edith actually set him and his wife up and would work. She spent a whole night making a picnic basket for this girl and Jerem's wife now to go have a picnic together. And there was flowers and baked goods. And that was just like the heart and flair of Edith that kind of made L'Abri what it is. And so in her book, The Secret Life of Homemaking, she writes that art in various forms expresses and gives opportunity for others to share in and respond to things which would otherwise remain vague and empty yearnings. Art satisfies and fulfills something in a person creating and in those responding. So with all of this L'Abri, there's still so many things that they are doing now in light of the Schaeffers, and their dependence on the Lord in making L'Abri what it is, and their love for people grew L'Abri to heights that they never thought would happen. L'Abri currently has 11 different sites. I think the closest one, there's one in Boston. That's probably the closest to you guys. There's also one in Rochester, Minnesota, which we'll get to why there's one there. But the life of Edith and Edith and Francis continues just to mold and shape believers Corbin is a huge Schaeffer fan. I'm a huge Schaeffer fan, and just churches are all around the world. There are also a lot of college institutes that kind of base themselves off of L'Abri. And at Covenant Seminary in St. Louis, there's a Francis Schaeffer Institute that just Jerome Bars has created to just pay honor and respect to how the Lord used the Schaeffers. So in 1978, Francis was actually diagnosed with lymphoma and began treatment at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, which is why there is a Schaeffer House in Rochester. While they were there treatment, they were still not done doing ministry and started a L'Abri in Rochester, Minnesota. And then the next 6 years of Schaeffer's life, he would just spend traveling to speak. He would write books, and he would just spend the rest of his time in Rochester. And then on May 15th in 1984, Francis went home to be with the Lord. After Francis' death, Edith still continued on with L'Abri and still continued the ministry and the work. And she actually just recently passed, so not recently, 12 years ago, but recently passed away in 2013 back home in Switzerland. And since then, the life of L'Abri is still just as it was when they were still alive. And the Lord is still using their ministry. Francis has written 22 books. Edith has written 20. And they're just continuing doing the Lord's work in such monumental ways, even later on after they are already home with the Lord and celebrating. And I hope Edith is surrounded by flowers in heaven. And so that's kind of the life of the Schaeffers. They really love engaging with art and engaging with culture. And so Corbin's going to come up and teach us how we can do that. And then we're going to have a little exercise where we will be able to engage with life and culture. Pause this
So
thing.
if you're familiar with Ligonier and R.C. Sproul, it is through written letters between Francis Schaeffer and R.C. Sproul that Ligonier happened. And so lots of influence in a lot of different ways. Kind of like Faith said, I'm a big fan of the Schaeffers as well. Charlie's middle name is L'Abri. We were like on a kick of reading their books for a really, really, really long time, and it was just like we couldn't get that out of our heads. And so that ended up being her middle name. But really, Heaven and I are specifically inspired by probably more so Edith. I hate to say it, but Edith is awesome. And there's an article I was reading, and this is kind of not relevant to what I'm about to talk about. I was doing, so I'm doing doctoral work right now for a degree. I switched degrees. I was doing what's called a THM, and I was going to write on the Schaeffers for my thesis, on the Schaeffers and using hospitality and creativity as an apologetic. And basically the idea of it was like your apologetics are enriched and made stronger if it's in the context of hospitality in the home, sharing a table with somebody, and if you're kind of harnessing beauty in the arts and things like that. I abandoned that project though, and changed degrees to a doctorate in preaching. So I'm not doing that anymore, but I have like 40 pages of stuff written for that abandoned project. If you're ever interested in that, I also have like all their books. But Schaeffers are super inspiring, how they engage culture, engaged art, and then also did hospitality. I totally recommend reading Edith Schaeffer's book, L'Abri, if you wanted just a kind of a short biography of their adventures in the Swiss Alps. Super interesting, super inspiring. The Lord really did work in a lot of different ways. But I'm not here to talk about the Schaeffers. I'm here to talk about creativity in the arts. So we're going to start in Genesis 1. If you have a phone Bible, you can get that out if you want. We're going to start in Genesis 1. I'm going to try and be good about the time. I think we will be good about the time. I know that we've just eaten a ton of carbs and that it's also time change tonight. And so tomorrow we might just not have church. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. We will have church. There is the Lord's Supper tomorrow. We're not skipping that. So we'll make it through this, and we will be at church tomorrow, even though there's time change. Amen? Okay, cool. We do get an hour, so maybe it'll benefit us. Maybe that's the only reason we will be at church. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so let's start here. So my interest in the Schaeffers, in Labrie, let me say it like this. My interest in Christianity and the arts kind of started with three things. It started with one, my wife, who, if you know her and spend time with her, you know that she's artsy. She draws, she paints, she does calligraphy, she does bread baking, she does all those different things. You can't even read my handwriting. So I've had to learn to be more artistic. We did a paint by numbers one time, and that was like the most I've ever done. So she got me to be more interested in like artistic stuff and caring about all that. The Schaeffers were also something that got me more into thinking about Christianity and the arts and engaging with culture and all these different things. They've been super influential on me, but also a class that I took in my bachelor's degree on Christianity and the arts was something that really kind of boosted my interest in thinking through these things, studying these things. Me and Patty and Topaz were talking a little bit about just kind of thinking through cultural issues and things like that. But I had a really great teacher and a really great class, and this was years ago. I was actually introduced to Francis Schaeffer in that class. I read his book, Christianity and Art. I think that's what it's called. Art in the Bible, that's what it is. Thank you, Faith. She knows. Art in the Bible. And that book was super duper helpful. And I remember that class blew my mind in a lot of ways. We had to read books on Christianity and the arts, several different art forms. We had to read short stories. We had to watch Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. If you've ever seen that movie, it's super weird and artsy, but it's cool. Terrence Malick professes Christianity, and so there's like Christian reflections in it and things like that. So we had to like watch that and review it. I remember in that class we read a book on video games being a art form that Christians can engage with, and I found that really surprising because I didn't think of it as art or as something that Christians necessarily needed to engage with. But nonetheless, learned a little bit about that there as well. But kind of the most important thing that I learned in that class is that Christians are inherently creative, and really all people are inherently creative, and that there's a reason for that. And that's kind of what I want to dig into a little bit tonight. So, in my talk this evening, I want to just cover some basics about how we as Christians should understand creativity and think about engaging with the arts, which more often than not are an expression of kind of the cultural moments, is maybe a way that we could put that and say that. That's something that Francis Schaeffer actually argued quite a bit in his book called Escape from Reason, where he kind of looks at the art throughout the centuries and can tell you based on the art where things are going. And so he kind of predicted the postmodern relativism that we live in today based on the abstraction arts of a couple years ago. And so he was kind of a very prophetic voice in that way, looking forward. But that's not what I want to focus on today. So I want to cover these topics. I want to talk about creativity in the image of God. I want to talk about guardrails for Christians and the arts. I want to talk about motivation for engaging the art or engaging with art and culture. And then I want to talk about some practical tips for how to do that. But first, before we dive in and read a passage of scripture, I want to encourage the person in here who feels like they're not artistic, which was me, like I said, for the longest time. Again, sat next to my wife. I'm illiterate, basically. She is just so artistic and so capable of doing different things. Not just her, but also her family. Her dad is a character artist in Houston. He did characters for the Astros World Series games. Her sister, her younger sister, is a super talented artist who can do portraits and all sorts of stuff. And so they'll all talk art and show each other their sketchbooks at Thanksgiving and stuff. And I'm like, please don't look at my handwriting, right? And so if you have ever felt like I used to feel, where it's like, I'm not somebody who does artistic things, I'm not creative, what I want to encourage you with is that you are artistic and you are creative. You just might not know it yet. And that art and creativity isn't just drawing or directing a movie. It can be setting wonderful tables and putting table decorations out, which is something that Edith Schaeffer, like Faith mentioned, did a lot. It can be cooking. If you've met Jeff's son, Chris, he's a chef in Manhattan. Oh, my word. He made the craziest ravioli for me not too long ago. And that is art, let me tell you. There's many, many, many ways to do art, to be creative. It doesn't just fit into kind of these neat categories of like, I'm painting, I'm drawing. It could be music, it could be writing. That's kind of where, that's my wheelhouse more so is writing. I do a lot of writing. I feel like all I do is write, actually, between sermons and things like this. So you are creative, whether you realize it or not. And so hopefully this will encourage you towards that a little bit tonight. So I want to read out of Genesis 1, and I'm going to read two different sections to kind of give us a baseline. What I want to kind of do at this first point is establish like a theology of creativity. Might be a way we could put it. So Genesis 1, I'm going to read verse 1, and then I'm going to jump down to verse 26. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Skip down to verse 26 with me. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on earth." Let's pray, and then we'll hop into this. Lord, thank you for gathering us tonight to talk about something that doesn't get talked about enough. Creativity, the arts, engaging with culture and ideas, and the moment that we're in. Lord, I pray that you would just encourage us tonight, Lord, that you'd equip us, that you'd help us to think and see in new ways. Lord, I just pray that you would edify this group of believers tonight as we gather in fellowship. It's in your name I pray. Amen. First, let's establish a baseline for Christianity and creativity, or again, we could call it a theology of creativity. Kind of three facts from the first chapter of Genesis that I think helps us out. First is this: God is creator and is therefore creative. So this is, I think, something that we all realize, but maybe don't know the depths of it. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. We all believe that God is our creator. The Apostles' Creed, for instance, begins with, "I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth." We believe that God created ex nihilo, which is Latin for from nothing, that he didn't have things that he made everything with. He created from nothing. There was no material, no like raw essence or matter that he took and formed into things. He made from nothing. Whenever you prepared, if you brought pasta sauce tonight, I'm guessing you did not make that pasta sauce from nothing. We might say from scratch, but that's not from nothing, right? It's not like you made the tomatoes and you made the sausage. You went and bought those ingredients and you put them together. God did not make the universe like that. He created from nothing. There was nothing there, and he spoke what is into existence. Everything created was original to the mind of God. He did not have a reference point. It wasn't art by numbers or something like that. He had no one's work to copy off of. Creation is wholly original to the mind of God. There's no being that is more original or creative than God. No being that is more original or creative than God. Obviously, the main place that we see the creativity of God is in nature. And not only do we see God's creativity in nature, but we also are pointed to God through nature because he's revealed himself in creation. This is something that we as Christians call general revelation, that God has made himself known through the creation. Here's some verses on that. Psalm 8, the first 4 verses of that says this: "O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babies and infants you have established strength because of your foes, to still the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingertips, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you care for him?" Psalm 19, verses 1 and 2, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. Romans chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. So God's revealed himself, made himself known in his handiwork in creation. Not only is God's creativity seen in creation, but also in the fact that he commissions the making of art. So he creates, he made the trees, he made us, he made dogs, and all those fun things. But also in the Bible, he actually commands that art be made. In the latter chapters of Exodus, when God's telling the people of Israel how to construct the tabernacle, he tells them to make certain patterns and fabric weaves and jewels and things like that. Exodus 28, verse 33, he says this through Moses, on its hem you shall make pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet yarns around its hem with bells of gold between them. There's sections that talk about how to array and place jewels on breastplates and things like that, making cherubim statues, all sorts of different types of art and figures and patterns and beautiful things God commanded to be made for the tabernacle. So God is the creator who made everything from nothing, and because of that, he is the most creative being in the universe and is wholly original in his creation. All right, so just establishing bird's eye view that fact, God is creative. Next fact. All right, we're going to kind of move through this and it'll kind of tie together at the end. Next fact that we see in Genesis 1 that I think helps us understand art and creativity is what is called the creator-creation distinction. I'm going to explain what that means here in a minute because it's kind of a big thought. The creator-creation distinction. What this is that God is in one category and all that he has created is in another category. And that there's a giant chasm between those two categories. There's what the creation is like and there's what God is like. And there's a world of difference between those two things. A world of difference. The main difference between the creator, God, and the creature is that the creature is contingent or dependent. Meaning, if God did not make us, we would not exist. Or if God stopped sustaining us, we would cease to exist. So, for instance, Colossians chapter 1, in verses 15 and 17, talks about how God the Son sustains all things. It says this, he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation, for by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So he's keeping the universe in place, keeping the galaxies moving and us rotating around the sun. I almost in my head said the sun rotating around us. That was disproved like 500 years ago, which that'd be really weird now to think about that. The sun rotated around us. That'd be wild. Glad that's not true for some reason. I don't think it matters to us, but that'd be weird. Anyways, so God is different from us creatures because, unlike us, he is not contingent. He's not dependent. So my existence is dependent on God. I just hit this mic. That probably will sound good in the video. My existence is contingent and dependent. If he stops, I stop, right? His existence is not contingent on anything. He is, or like he says to Moses in the burning bush in Exodus 6, I am who I am. God just is. There's nobody who made God or caused God. He's not dependent on anyone else for his existence. And that's really the main difference between us and God. I'm dependent. I'm contingent. He is not contingent. He depends on nobody. He is just God. He is pure act. He is. And I wish we could dig into that a little bit more because that's a whole rabbit hole. But take that for what it is right there. Now, you might be wondering, okay, you're lecturing us on theology. What does that have to do with art? Well, good. I'm glad. What does that have to do with art? Well, it reminds us that we are not God. Reminds us that we are not God. He is creator. We are creature. He is original. We are derivative. There's nothing you and I do there's nothing that you and I could make that is original. That makes sense. Unlike God. When the Creator creates, it is wholly original. When we create, it's based on what we see in His creation. It's based on what we see around us. And in the sense of like pure originality, this is something that only God is capable of, right? You see a director put out a movie and it says like a Steven Spielberg original film, right? Or a book, an original novel. You see a song, an original song. Really, if we want to get technical with the theology with this, there's nothing original unless it's been made by God. He's the only one who can create something that's truly original. This is, I think, humbling. I think it's really humbling. Our art, even if it is unlike the art of any other human being, is an imitation of something in God's creation. Right? You might be the first person to paint that landscape, but God made that landscape. Right? You might be the first person to bake bread in this way, but God made the wheat and the grain. Right? So it's ultimately not original to you because you're the creature and He's the creator. He's the one who creates originally. The great C.S. Lewis is helpful here. He was writing on English literature in the 16th century, and in this kind of this essay that he was writing, he says this: an author should never conceive of himself as bringing into existence beauty or wisdom that did not exist before, but simply and solely as trying to embody in terms of his own art some reflection of eternal beauty and wisdom. And what he means by that is, again, not creating originally, but creating something that points to the Creator. That it's an imitation that reflects God. C.S. Lewis also says that seeing ourselves as creators or originators sums up what happened at the fall, where Adam and Eve tried to be like God. Right? They wanted to be like Him. God's the only one who's truly creative, who can make from nothing. We're not like God. Only God can make what's true and original. And for me to step in and say that I can create originally is an echo of Satan's words, you'll be like God. You'll be like God. Jerome Bars, who Faith mentioned earlier, in his book on Christianity and the Arts called Echoes of Eden, it's a good book, I recommend it, talks about how C.S. Lewis saw similarities between the Christian view of art and the Platonic view of art, and we won't go into that tonight. But the similarity that he saw is that art is imitative of something transcendent. That art is trying to capture something that is greater than ourselves, something that is already there, not original, but something bigger than us. So for Christians, art is an act of humility, reflecting what our Creator has made, imitation that points back to God. I've got a quote in here. I wonder where I put it. I thought I put it below here, but I don't see it. But William Shakespeare, said that all he did in his writings was hold a mirror up to nature. And basically what he meant by that was, I'm not making anything original. I'm just retelling what is there. And so he understood, in a sense, that fact. C.S. Lewis also, while talking about the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien, who I love as well, he was talking specifically about Tolkien's Middle-earth books. Lewis called what Tolkien did subcreation. Subcreation. So you think of like the sub-level of your house. It's like not the house, but it's like a part of the house is kind of the word picture there. So you know about Middle-earth and like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all those books. Tolkien created a fantasy world. And if you know anything about Middle-earth, it's a lot more than you think. So there's a book called The Silmarillion, which is like a Bible, basically, of like thousands upon thousands of years of just like boring history of his world, right? So like he wrote like 10, I think it's like 100,000 years, something like that. It's a lot, just years of history to back up his world. There's elves in the Lord of the Rings. He wrote out the elven language, and it's something that you can go to college and learn. Did you know this? You can go and learn Tolkien's Elvish in college if you wanted to study it. So like he made a universe, made a world, its own history, its own geography, its own religion, its own language, like a fully developed world. And what Lewis said about Tolkien and that creativity, and just again to emphasize how much was there in Middle-earth, like he's got his own poems, his own songs, I mean, everything is there in Tolkien's world. Lewis called that subcreation because that world that Tolkien made could only exist because Tolkien saw the world that God had made, right? He couldn't think of language and geography and mountains and all these different pictures if he hadn't first seen what God had created in our creation. So even something as original as writing your own language for your fantasy novel really isn't original because it's just a reflection of what God has already done. So it's very humbling when we set art kind of in that context. Third fact, because we are made in God's image, we are creative too. All right, this is the third thing. So this is why I read the split between God doing the creative acts in the first few verses of Genesis and then making us in his image. We are made in the image of God. God is distinct from us again as creator. So we could say it like this, though we are like God in a sense, God is not like us. So that preserves in wording the creature-creator distinction. Now, there's two ways to think through what it means to be made in the image of God. First, in our capacities, and second, in our function. And you've probably heard me talk about this if you've been with us on Wednesday nights. We talked about this for a little bit. But let's start with the second, our function in being made in the image of God. Image in Genesis, in the context that the book was written by Moses coming out of Egypt, had a very specific meaning. And really what that meaning was kings during that time, specifically like think Pharaoh in Egypt, things like that, is they would take statues of themselves and they'd set them up in different places in their kingdom to show that they have reign and rule over that town out in the middle of nowhere. So here's your king, here's an image of him, this is where he rules. Also, you can think of it on coins, right? We put our rulers on our coins. We haven't put a new ruler on a coin in a while. But you got Abe on stuff. You got George Washington, Ben Franklin. We put rulers on coins. So kind of same concept of like, this is your ruler. Here's his image. That's what pharaohs would do. And so image of God in the context of the Old Testament referred to displaying God's image over God's creation or displaying God's rule and reign over creation. Another thing that it meant was specifically the pharaohs during the time were considered to be the image of God. And so in our scriptures, looking at all humanity and saying everyone's made in the image of God, it's basically saying, hey, all human beings are special. All human beings have equal worth, dignity, and value in the sight of God. It's not just your king. We're all royalty in a sense. So that's what it means kind of functionally to be made in the image of God, that we exercise, we display God's rule and reign in creation. Kind of base level there for that. Now, image of God is also taken by theologians to refer to our unique capacity as human beings. I don't know if you've noticed this, but we're different from animals. I have a golden retriever. She is adorable. She's an idiot. She runs into stuff. She's in a diaper right now for reasons I'll explain to you later. She's a mess. She's incompetent. She's a buffoon. She cannot reason and think like a human being can. She does not have spiritual capacities to understand the spiritual realities that we understand, to be saved, things like that, right? We have different capacities as image bearers than the rest of creation has. And one of those capacities is true creativity. Human beings are able to be creative in ways that none of God's creation outside of us are able to be. Right, sure, animals make things. Beavers make dams. Bees make hives. They make things, but you're not going to go out in the woods and find a chipmunk painting a Mona Lisa. That would be strange if you found that. Now, I know before somebody raises their hand and is like, people have taught elephants to draw, that's like Pavlov dog kind of stuff, right? They're being trained to do that. You're not going to find an elephant in the wild like baking bread. Just not going to happen. They don't have that capacity. So one of the capacities that we have as a human being made in the image of God is that we are creative like our Creator. So inherent to us as image bearers is creativity. All right, so baseline. Creativity as Christians, or thinking about creativity and the human race. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about guardrails for engaging with the arts and culture and doing art as Christians. So this is kind of a big topic shift, but I think it's going to be helpful. I find these two biblical categories to be helpful when it comes to thinking through these things. First, do not be conformed. This is probably a phrase you're familiar with. Do not be conformed to this world. The Bible makes really clear that Christians are to be in the world, but not of the world. Meaning, we live in it, we have to engage with it, but we must not become like it. We must not become like it. The Bible talks about this in two primary ways. First, in how it pits followers of Christ against the world. So Jesus and the apostles talk about this frequently. John 15, 18, 19, if the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own, but because you are not of this world, but I chose you out of this world, therefore the world hates you. John 17, 14, I have given them your word, and the world hates them because they are not of this world, just as I am not of the world. That's Jesus' prayer for his disciples. 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 and 16. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Romans 12, 1 and 2, I'll read verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So the world is at odds with Jesus and Christianity. There's a divide there. There's a distinction there. And we see clearly in those verses that I just read, we're not to be conformed to the world, and we're also not supposed to love the world, but we live here and we have to engage with it, right? It's a matter of fact. We're stuck here. We're stuck for now, unless Jesus comes back and Lord, come quickly. There's so much chaos right now. We want him to come back. So to engage the culture and the arts, we have to engage without conforming and without loving what the world has to offer. And that is a tough balancing act. To learn how do we engage without getting stuck in it. Many pastors and Christian leaders, in an attempt to engage with culture, end up conforming and compromising. We see this happen a lot, where it's like, I want to win the culture, I use the culture to win the culture. Next thing you know, I'm like the culture, and there's nothing different about me and my church from the world. And that's dangerous. So there's got to be balance. You see balance in people like Francis Schaeffer, Edith Schaeffer, C.S. Lewis, who learned how to do this well, how to do this without compromising and without conforming. The Bible makes clear that we are to be in the world, but not of the world, and it reminds us of this in that we have a heavenly citizenship. This is another way this fact is communicated to us. We belong to a different kingdom, and for that reason, we're supposed to look like foreigners in the world that we live in. So Philippians chapter 3, verse 20, but our citizenship is in heaven, and from it we await the Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. The Apostle Peter says this in 1 Peter 2:9, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So not only are we at odds with the world as Christians, but we are part of a different nation, a heavenly nation. We don't belong here. We're ambassadors. We're pilgrims. We're sojourners. We're passing through. This isn't our home. We belong to somewhere else. And so there's kind of two ends of the spectrum on how we can think through engaging culture and the arts and things like this as Christians. You have one end, which is the compromise end, which I just talked about, where it's in an attempt to win the culture, become like the culture. That's one end of the spectrum where it's bad. The other end is to go the monastery route, which is what happened in the medieval era of church history, the patristic era of church history, where you build monasteries and you hide and you live in silence and you live completely apart from the world. You see that in communities today like the Amish, for example, where it's total separation. And I think in doing that kind of extreme end of it, you lose your salt. We're not effective in changing and reforming and redeeming the culture anymore. And so there's got to be a balance between the two. So what is the balance? And do we see kind of biblical examples for how to engage with culture? Let me give you two examples. The Apostle Paul quotes to Titus, a Cretan prophet and thinker. So Paul, writing scripture in the book of Titus, the letter of Titus to Titus, quotes a philosopher from Crete to make a point. So this is Titus chapter 1, verse 12. One of the Cretans, a prophet of their own, said, Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. And that was what scholars believe was like a poem from this prophet. And Paul's quoting it to make a point, and he's using pagan literature as he's talking about what he's talking about in Scripture. Maybe the best example is Acts 17, when Paul is in Athens, and he's talking to the thinkers and the philosophers and the theologians there. Verse 22 of Acts 17, so Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious, for as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you." So he walks into their kind of think tank place in Athens. He sees their God to the unknown, and he uses that as an opportunity, exactly, to get into the gospel. So he's weaponizing culture to further the kingdom. And so there's a balance there. So with that, let's talk about this. Did I skip ahead a page? I've got so many notes. I'm flying. So here we are. So let me talk about a guardrail. A guardrail now. So first guardrail was do not be conformed. Second guardrail is this. Listen to this from Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. I think this is helpful. Paul says this, "See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ." The word captive there means what you think. It means abducted, kidnapped, taken into captivity, apprehended. And so what Paul's basically getting at there is like, hey, these thoughts and these ideas are going to come at you. Don't get kidnapped. Don't get hijacked. Don't get abducted by this way of thinking. Stand firm. And yet, this is the guy who went and he used their gods and their thinkers and their philosophers to engage with them. So there's balance, and that balance is easier said than done in this. So with this, let's go to this next kind of subtopic. Let's talk about motives for engaging culture. Motives for engaging culture. So we need to resist being taken captive by worldly thinking, while at the same time we need to take thoughts captive and make them submit to Christ. The Apostle Paul, when talking about his ministry and spiritual warfare, addresses how we are to engage with thinking and opinions that oppose God. He says this in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. He says this, "We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ." Every thought captive to obey Christ. So context there, people are arguing against God. They're promoting ideas that are in opposition to what we believe about God. And Paul says, we destroy those arguments, which is aggressive, obviously, but also we take these thoughts captive and we make them obey or submit to Jesus Christ. So it's like, hey, no, we're gonna own this. Is kind of the attitude here, and I think that's a really good guide for responding to contrary and worldly thinking. We destroy arguments and opinions raised against God, and we take every thought captive and make it obey Christ. So maybe we could say it this way: instead of being taken captive by worldly philosophy, take worldly philosophy captive and make it bow to Jesus, is the idea he's giving there. So how do we engage culture and the arts and worldly thinking? We capture that thinking and we think about it under or in submission to the Lord Jesus Christ, is another way to say that. This is a great guide for doing apologetics and cultural engagement in general. Let me give you a silly example of this, okay? Charlie is obsessed with Frozen. Your kids like Frozen too. Specifically, well, there's only 2 Frozen movies. She loves both the Frozen movies. Elsa, Anna, I get corrected on that. I'll say Anna. She'll be like, "It's Anna, Dad." Like, I'm an adult, be quiet. No, just kidding. I don't say that. But she loves those movies right now. So I could turn those on and let it play and listen to it, let it go. You want to build a snowman? Oh my gosh, I've heard this song so many times. Right? So I could just kind of flippantly let it go. Or I can take what those ideas are captive and make it obey Christ. So what are some of the major themes of Frozen? We're going to dissect a Disney movie this evening, folks. What are some of the major ideas in there? Well, the main idea in both Frozen movies is self-discovery and being your authentic true self, right? So think about the movie. Elsa Who's seen Frozen? Am I talking to an audience that has no clue what I'm saying? Okay, most people have seen Frozen. So like the plot of the movie is Elsa's had to suppress her magic powers her whole life. And it's about her letting go, let it go, let it go. Cold, snow, ice, whatever, right? Let it go. She's trying to kind of throw off this restriction to who she really is and figure out who she is and become who she ought to be. That's the plot of the movie. And that's really the plot of the second movie more so. So what is that, right? Where does that thinking come from? Well, our culture is all about being your true self, self-authentication, following your own heart, right? That's all over our culture. Those are the major themes of this movie. Another theme in Frozen 1 is kind of a deconstruction of the princess movie genre, right? You've got your old Disney princess movies, Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, all that fun stuff. True Love's Kiss, the guy saves you, right? That doesn't happen in Frozen. It turns out that the guy is a bad guy. See, this is what I'm talking about. Feminism. I'm kidding. Anyway, so the guy's a bad guy, and it's not true love's kiss that saves them at the end of the day. It's sisterly love, girl power, right? Now, in that is a good message. You don't need a man to complete you. I agree with that. Jesus completes you. But there's also, well, he is a man. He's also God. So Christ is subverted, right? But then there's also kind of that tinge of feminism in there where it's like, we don't need no man, right? So you've got kind of both. So I could sit and just, ignore it like I normally do. Or I could think about it and make those thoughts submit to Christ. Hey, the Bible doesn't say be your true self. It says that your heart is wicked and deceitful, and if you follow your heart, it's going to really hurt you. The Bible doesn't say discover who you are. It says deny yourself. It says take up your cross. So if I'm engaging with the ideas in the movie, I can talk to Charlie about something really deep, right? You don't want to be your true self. You want to deny yourself. Yes, a man won't complete you, but Jesus is the one who ultimately satisfies you. And also biblical marriage is a good thing, right? So there's things that can be talked about there. I could go on autopilot, or I can engage with the thinking the movie and make it submit to Christ. So that's a silly example, but that's what I'm talking about right now, is how do we think through things and engage in a Christian way and think about these things as Christians. So kind of first way that we can engage culture as Christians, or motivation for engaging culture as Christians, is to make it obey Christ. Second, this one's quick. You probably knew I was going here. Glorify God. Right. Next big motivation, 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. So when I read a novel, I want to do it to the glory of God. Whenever I paint or bake bread or smoke meats or do graphic design, whatever creative activity it is, I want to do it to the glory of God, for Him, for His name's sake. So God's glory motivates how we do art and engage with art and culture. Now that was a lot. I've got 3 quick tips. This is actually quick. I'm serious this time. It's legitimately quick. These are not thus saith the Lord tips. These are just some wisdom that has helped me just practically engage with art and culture and things better. So first is this, and this sounds so cheesy, but I think it's helpful. Create more than you consume. Create more than you consume. I think this is good wisdom today, where the temptation is to sit and scroll on our phones and just go through reels and shorts and things like that. We are so creatively bankrupt today, and it's really, really sad. Make a rule for yourself that you're going to create more than you consume. Add, build, beautify, put your phone down, turn off the TV, stop doom scrolling, make something for the glory of God. That's one kind of practical tip here. Here's a second practical tip. Linger. Stop rushing. Enjoy what is before you. Slow down and think, and I know that is easier said than done in New York. The pace of life here is fast, a lot faster than Ash Grove, Missouri, that's for sure. A lot faster. But oftentimes, kind of what happens in our lives is that the only time that when we are not busy and we're not scrolling on our phones is like the 5 minutes on our pillow before we fall asleep. Like if that's the only time you have to think about life and what you've seen and what you've heard and what's going on and the relationships you have, that's not a very deep life. It's just not. We've got to want more than that. I want more than that. Hopefully you want more than that. Last, always let creation point you to the Creator. And I think that this is very much so biblically based. I like Jonathan Edwards. You know him from Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. He used a lot of nature imagery in his writings and in his sermons. So, for instance, in Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, he compares a rock or a spider web failing to hold up a rock to our good works failing to hold back God's wrath. Right? Very vivid picture. But he also uses like God's mercy is as deep as the sea, and God's wisdom is like a tree. And the reason he thought like that is because he would. This was a long time ago. He'd go and ride his horse for hours, and he'd just contemplate and think. And he'd look at nature and let it point him back to the Creator. And it would just inspire him and help him think through God and who God is. I think we've lost that, but we need that. So that's my last tip. I'm done now. We'll stop there with what I'm talking about. Let's do the exercise.
We're not done yet.
We're not done yet. If you have to go, don't feel bad if you have to go. But we're going to go ahead and keep going. If you're having fun. Who's having fun? Okay, good.
Okay. I don't care what you do. Okay, so we are going to engage with a piece of art. The piece of art is on the TV. And normally when you go to a museum, it's like on a beautiful canvas and you can see all the strokes. So be a little creative with us. But before we begin, there is two things I want to say. If you are inspired with what we were talking about, or actually, first, if you all the things Corbin said about talking or like creating of like art or music or whatever, and you're like, I still don't have something you think I'm good at. Edith Schaeffer has a book called The Secret Life of Homemaking, and she kind of dives through all of the ways that you can be creative. And one of them that I always find so engaging is creative recreation. It's like, how do you go outside? How do you engage your body? And that is also a form of creativity. So I also wanted to encourage you in that. But it's also a great book if you want to read it. And then second, if what we are talking about and communicating with tonight, you want to know more, there is Labrie has podcasts that you can listen to, and they engage with all acts of culture and all not acts, but all means of culture. And Mark Minnell, who used to work for Labrie and is a speaker, and he has written lots of books, and he has a podcast with Labrie called All Art is a Liar, or All Artists Are a Liar. And it's a great resource about how art reflects the creator. And so there is always an illusion with art because it's not the clear picture of what the Lord has. So it's a great podcast. Mark's great. He came to the Schaeffer house like a month and a half ago and gave that talk, which was wonderful. Anyway, okay, back on topic. We are going to engage with, I'm going to butcher his name, and I am sorry. I'm very Irish and Podunk, Missouri. But we're going to engage with The Return of the Prodigal Son, which is a Baroque art. Baroque was the 16th through 18th century European art. They emphasized drama and emotion and like deep colors. And it's by Morello. Sorry. And so it's this piece of art. It's The Prodigal Son Return. And so I just want you to sit and just observe for a little bit, like a minute. And then I have some questions that we can talk about, and it's all engage. Okay, so we're going to begin convo. And the first question I have is just what stands out to you when you first look at this painting?
The calf being brought to be killed.
The calf?
Right, that's in the story.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Because the arms, it looks like a real big hug.
Yeah.
It's like a bed that's wrapping him.
Yeah.
Looks really repetitive, the prodigal.
Yeah.
And the prodigal looks like he's really rejoicing.
Yeah.
Getting back home.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's good job, Topaz. Anything else? Yeah.
There's a person holding the basket, probably the robe in there,
Uh-huh.
and it looks like the brother that's jealous of him. Right next to him, looking at him like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. Observe that because we're gonna come back to that. Yeah. How does the artist use light, color, body language, we kind of talked about a little bit, to tell this story of the prodigal son's return? What's the next question? Yeah. It's not doomy and gloomy. Yeah.
Notice about the person with the yellow robe, like his facial features is like, son, come on home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The robe that is seems to be like the new robe
Mhm.
brought to him. It's like really shining and
Yeah.
jumping out.
It's royal colors too. It's blues and reds and gold.
Said that his robes are the least colorful in the picture.
Yeah.
And the most written up.
Yeah. Anything else with this question before we move on?
We can kind of see how like background, like the boy and the people in the background are darker.
Yeah.
Like the main people, I guess, like son and father, like more lit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So where do your eyes naturally go when you're looking at this? And what might this suggest with the focus of the scene? Yeah.
Mine instantly goes to the father.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like, it seems so, it's just so full.
Mm-hmm.
It's so full.
And his cheeks almost look a little rosy, like he's smiling so big. Yeah. What else? You're good. Yeah.
I go to the new road in the basket.
Yeah.
I catch you things.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I think like I was just like just the center of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
The father and son
Mm-hmm.
together.
Yeah. So how do you think this painting captures the moment of the son's return as described in Luke 15?
Son comes back.
The son comes back?
Thanks.
Yeah.
And the father's just embracing him with so much
Yeah.
love. And you see those colors in the background, like breaking out the robes.
Yeah.
Okay, like he's not upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're back home, I just want you.
Yeah.
Means the restoration part.
Yeah.
And that brand new robe and the ring on the
Yes.
hand of the guy, like waiting for him.
Yeah.
Still want to honor him.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of captures the entire story.
Yeah.
The ring, the calf, the robe. And you have the other brother, the angry brother.
You have the angry brother. Yeah.
And his torn robes from his past life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, what might the artist be trying to show? We already talked about it a little bit about the father's character, and how does this relate to our understanding of God's mercy?
I think he's actually showing God's love, like
Yeah.
mercy and forgiveness. The way God has mercy and forgives us when we go back, and when we come back, He welcomes us. Like, I'm glad you're home, son. I'm glad you came back.
Yeah. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. It's more or less his heart's moving in his head.
Yeah. The robes kind of, in my mind, when I'm looking at this, remind me of like the heart of stone and the heart of flesh, of like the old robes being the heart of stone and the new robes being the heart of flesh, where we get to be we enter into the family of God, and like we are accepted, and He so lovingly comes and just welcomes us in.
You know, the way it kind of, for me, captured like the flow of the passage, because if you remember, like the climactic moment is the son coming back,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's afterwards that it's like, and really the point of the story, the punchline of the story is older brother. Body Bachman calls it a parable of the older brother, not the son.
Yeah.
And so it's like the central focus is the mercy and redemption of God, but then just like kind of slinking off to the side is the legalism and the condemnation of the brothers.
Which is the great segue to our last question.
Sorry.
Thank you, Corbin. So the older brother is depicted in this very back. You just see his head. The very right. I don't know my left from my right. corner. And what does this say about the artist's focus on grace versus justice?
By the grace of
Yeah. Yeah. The oldest brother is in the background of this depiction. What does that say about the artist's focus on grace versus justice?
Like grace is in the front.
Yeah.
You see the big picture.
Yeah.
That's in the background.
Yeah.
No?
And if you focus on justice too, I do believe, I don't know why I'm trying, I see it right here. The brother's face looks kind of disgusted, and it looks,
He's angry.
yeah, judgmental.
Judgmental.
Right. And so when we,
He's like saying, I've been here all this time.
right.
And he's coming back home.
Yeah.
And you're giving him this. But the father's also trying to explain that, he was once lost and now he's found.
Yeah.
It kind of seems to me, and I might be reading into it too much, but it's like,
I don't think you can do that with art.
yeah, that's true. Where he's looking, it's almost like he's not looking. Like you can't tell where he's looking.
Right.
It looks like he's looking at the cap and the brother.
Yeah.
Where it's like the whole thing, Justin, like that he's getting all this and that he's back.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think going back to Schaeffer, this view of when people have the understanding of they only view what's justice and what's right without the understanding of the Lord's grace is what causes the crisis of faith and what causes not the dependence on the Father and the love and the forgiveness and the grace of the Father that we get to have when we're front and center. We don't have to be the people, Christians, that are on the side judging everyone. Yeah.
Like he's in the flesh.
Yes.
And it shows us that no one is too far gone.
Yeah.
For God. We shouldn't judge anyone.
Yes. Yeah.
If they're out of it.
Right. Even when someone falls away, we should judge them, but we should
Mm-hmm.
embrace them when they come back and say, it's great to see you.
Yeah.
Welcome back home.
Welcome back home. Exactly. Does anyone have any other observations about this piece before we kind of call
I
it?
just had a question, like,
Yeah.
the far right-hand corner, there's another face there, in the other hand, that might be,
I don't.
yeah, I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Like the woman?
There's another woman.
Yeah.
To the left of the brother, that's turning
Yeah.
her head away, and she doesn't look too happy either.
Yeah.
I don't know how you see it.
That's good. Anyone have ideas?
Who's the brother? All the way to
The one in the with just the head.
Yeah, the guy all the way in the right.
Yeah. The one that's like kind of lurking in the shadows. Yeah.
No, I
Where's
think
the
he's one
pointer?
Where's the
Just kidding. This is the brother right here.
Yeah, okay.
No, I thought it was the other guy looking at it.
Yeah, no, this is the brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah, these are the servants bringing the robes.
He's the only one in shadows.
Yeah.
Reason I thought he was brother.
It looks like he's
Yeah, you did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he looks angry, like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? I've been here forever.
The one in the gray and the green looks.
Yeah, angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I thought that was the brother.
This guy's the
And
brother.
the other one's just lurking in the back. I have
Yeah.
no idea.
It is just happy.
Yeah, the kid's just happy to be there.
Yeah, he won't be happy in a second. Also, just kind of the artistry of what's implied with him holding an axe, like not to be gruesome, but like you know what's gonna happen right now.
Yeah.
But like it's a good way to show and not tell. Yeah. I like it.
All right, before we end, I do want to just share one last, those were discussion questions, but then I realized if we look at the discussion questions, you can't look at the art. But I wanted to end, logistics. Wanted to end with a Schaeffer quote, and this is from his book, The Art in the Bible. And it says, "No work of art is more important than the Christian life. Every Christian is called to be an artist in a sense. The Christian's life is a thing of truth and also a thing of beauty in the midst of a lost and despairing world." So I just wanted to encourage you in that as we go out for the evening and go back to our homes or whatever you're doing. And I'm gonna.
Yeah. So, any questions from anything that we talked about tonight, just real quick, that anybody has for either of us? Any thoughts? Any questions? How's the time? And also, we'll both be here tomorrow. So, yeah.
Something I read one time, and it kind of goes into this whole. I think like in the Soviet times, and if you look at the architecture from the Soviet Union, it's very like blocky and dark, and it was a very depressing time. And like you see like where Christianity thrives, like architecture is so beautiful, and the buildings are so like they last forever.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, like a lot of like churches have kind of moved back to like, or not moved back to, but moved to like modern architecture where it's like church looks like a hospital.
Yeah.
Or a warehouse.
Or a warehouse, right? I love our church because there's beauty, right? And that's not something we should be afraid of. Yeah, that's a good observation.
You mentioned something about apologetics.
Yeah.
I've been having a lot of apologetic conversations, and I love it because I feel like it kind of gets my creative juices flowing.
Yeah.
I like having those conversations where you're like, okay, how do I get there with this part, like this with these words, and this phrase and stuff like that. So I never thought of it like a creative process.
Yeah.
You with another person in a conversation.
Yeah.
But like I really, really enjoy it.
And that's what Francis Schaeffer was all about. Like, so like his daughter would bring back college students. So they would be like studying music and philosophy or film. And so they would watch movies and talk about it. He'd let them play their instruments whenever they come to the Alps and stuff. So like these things can be segues to talking about the gospel. So like kind of, again, the Frozen example is silly. But to do that with, this piece of music, we walk out of a Broadway play and somebody's introspective on it. I'm going to talk to them about the themes in it. Because I've been thinking Christianly about the themes in it, right? To engage in that way. Yeah.
I hear a word that's been used a lot in theology that I didn't hear years ago, like deconstructing. I hear that word all the time lately.
Yeah.
And in the context that I'm hearing it is, it's just another word for falling away, right? Like if you're faithful. I never heard that word used before. How did this kind of get into, replacing the word falling away?
That's a good question. So,
So
I make a distinction. Yeah. Yeah. So I make a distinction with it. There's expressions of it that are that are just liberal, to be quite honest, right? To where it's like,
that's why I'm a little baffled with that word.
Yeah. So like the idea of it being like, you think of these people who have left the faith, like Josh Harris, people like that, where it is a falling away. Right. There's another sense that it's used, and it's kind of overshadowed by that other sense where it's just, I'm removing, really another word could be performed, honestly, where it's, I'm removing things that have been added on, things that are extra, things that are not helpful, going back to just basic Christianity.
So what's the exact definition that's used currently?
Yeah.
Deconstructing.
There's a ton of disagreement about that. I would take. Do you have a shot at it?
I don't have a definition, but I have a resource for you. I'm trying to find Nick McDonald. He is a pastor. He also worked a lot with college ministry at Mizzou. Just wrote a book, and I'm Googling what that book is right now because I forgot. It's something about. Let me get my phone really quick.
Yeah. So my shot at a definition of it would be like the unhealthy version. I think falling away is a good way to talk about it. The version of it where it's like I'm trying to get rid of things that are not good or biblical, that are extra. I would just kind of categorize it under the category.
It's a baffling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hijacked both ways. Yeah. So it depends on who uses it.
The book. Oh, I don't have servers down here. I'm so sorry. Okay, the book is The Light in Our Eyes: Rediscovering the Love, Beauty, and Freedom of Jesus in an Age of Disillusionment. And it's by Nick McDonald.
Nice. Cool. Any other questions? These are good questions.
I have a question. Like before I got saved, I used a lot of hard about different things. And you get saved and you kind of like leave that because there's a lot of pitfalls involved. This was awesome.
Yeah.
This was like a really cool angle of ministry. It was refreshing. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.
I even see people who are directors in the world come to know the Lord and take that direction and use it for like evangelism plays and stuff and Easter plays. So God can take what the world meant evil and turn it around For His good to draw people into the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And that's the way, because like, I like movies. I like to see
Yeah.
the directors, you know, and sometimes I stay home and come up with creative ideas how I would do a play.
Yeah.
To bring the gospel forward.
Yeah.
And I meant to put this in my notes, but it got full. But something that and I just had a conversation with some pastors about this, that frustrates me about Christian creativity is oftentimes it has the message and it has the like theology behind it, but it's not excellence in terms of quality. So I think, and if you love these movies, I'm sorry, but I think about like the early 2000s Christian movie boom with like, and I like these movies too, but like Fireproof, Courageous, things like that, where like on a quality level, it's not Schindler's List. You know what I'm saying? Where it's this isn't cinema. You know what I mean? And so I think sometimes you see as Christian art, whether it's music or movies or other things, where it's kind of like it's not like it's an attempt, but it's not excellent. It's not really that creative. And so I think maybe part of that is from how little this is talked about in churches, where Christians aren't hyped up towards excellence in these areas. And so I find that frustrating. Like Christian music, 90% of it is just so not great as far as like the beat and the music behind it. Yeah, it's just cheesy. Yeah, I agree.
If you want a swanky Christian musician, Russ Moore. He's great. He's a worship leader in St. Louis, and he's jazzy. It's fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We're not taught to use our creativity that way much in church.
Yeah.
You don't hear people say, but use your creativity, use your arts.
Yeah.
You know what? You can be creative with. It's not promoted that much in church.
Yeah.
Which it should be, because then people finally go to God and ask Him how to use that creativity.
Yeah.
Our art should be the most excellent of anybody's art. Should be. Oftentimes it's not, but it should be.
I think Christians also too really struggle with, or at least me, like the balance between loving beauty and wanting beautiful things in not a materialistic way, but when God created beauty, and so like how we reflect beauty and art and creativity, we can bring it into our homes, or we can bring it into how we dress or how we live or how we decorate our house. And that's a thing that like the Lord loves and the Lord cherishes, because He did make us creative. It just is whenever art or music or takes away from the glory of God. Like the chief end of man is to let our glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And we get to enjoy Him in the beauty and the creativity, which is really cool.
Thanks for coming tonight, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry that I talked for so long.
Good try.
Good. And thank you everyone who brought food.
Yes. It was delicious.
If you want to take a plate home, please do it. But let's pray, and then we can clean up and get our food and get out of here. And then I'll see you. Time change tonight, and I'll see you in the morning. Let's pray.